Hi, this is Doug Higgins. I feel like I should apologize in advance. I showed up to the Flaggstaf Roundup with a brand new phone, and I thought I had downloaded the proper app for recording, the same app that I've used at previous roundups, but unfortunately it was not the same app, and it had to be converted in order for me to get it into my editing software. So during that conversion, we lost a great deal in terms of fidelity. I promise you I will have this issue addressed before the Kaibab Roundup, which is the last weekend in June. If you would like more information, feel free to call me. You'll be able to see that in the YouTube comment box. Thank you.
Please give a nice welcome to Donna. Hi, I'm Donna. And, oh my goodness, what a privilege to be able to come up here and do this. You'll hear a lot more tonight. We have a similar story, but different perspectives from it. And thing when I speak into it was like, oh wow. I was listening to those just for today's, and I was thinking, it's been a really busy period in my life lately, and I think I need to put those and start reading them every morning again, because I kind of lost a lot of that. Are you there? Yeah. One of 4 kids. My parents had 4 kids in 5 years. We were like a pack of wolves. I'm the youngest and the only girl, so I definitely had the little sister bratty syndrome, and I still live that. I want what I want when I want it. And, it's a good way to live unless someone doesn't do what I want. And so, it's just one of those things. And, I grew up in life really happy. And all I wanted to do is have fun. And then I run into this guy, and he's a lot of fun. And so, I didn't want to fix him. I didn't want a project. I had no intention of getting married. I had no intention of just anything except having fun. So this is what happens when you run in full-blown into an alcoholic. There's a lot of fun. Now, my vision of an alcoholic was my grandma, who sat on the couch, drank beer, chain smoked, and yelled at us kids. Now that's an alcoholic to me, right? When I started partying with my husband to-be, it was fun. There was no grandma in that. He overshot the mark quite frequently, and, but we had a lot of fun together. And so we started dating in December. I think we got engaged end of January, February-ish. Got married in August. We got engaged. I wasn't sure I was engaged when I got engaged. So we went to a bar called Glen Avenue Marble Club in Tempe. And, they had this really amazing drink menu. And we started at the top and thought we would drink all the way down to the bottom. Probably 2/3 of the way through the drink menu, we got engaged. I went into the bathroom farther down and passed out in the bathroom, and he had to send the cocktail waitress to get me out. And now, mind you, I'm not an alcoholic. I just party a lot. And so we, continue this path of partying, and, we start a business, we lose the business. We decide that we should grow up. Right? And this is to me truly the difference between someone like me who just parties a lot and an alcoholic. And so, we decide we're going to have, we're going to grow up, we're going to have kids, we're going to stop partying, maybe a glass of wine here or there, Nothing like we normally do. And I stopped, and he totally couldn't. And he tried, and he meant it from the depth of his heart. He wanted the same thing I wanted, but he was totally incapable. And for some reason, I really, really understood that. And, I didn't take his disease personally. Now, it took me to the point of almost suicide. So it did wreak its havoc, but I never felt like it was about me. And, that he didn't love me enough. He didn't, whatever it was. And so, we have this beautiful baby boy. Now, we decided to have a child after we lost our business. Our cars had been repoed. We're living at my mom and dad's house. And it's a good time to have a baby, because that's going to help us grow up. And that's going to help us, life better. So we have this amazing little boy, and that's really where my journey starts, is of the insanity of living with someone who goes out for a drink after work and comes home at 2 a.m. I'm just going to go out for one drink. I'm going to be right back. And then, oh God, this guy at work was having a really hard time with his relationship, so I stayed with him and we talked all night long, and I gave him marriage counseling, and I'm like, dude, our life is falling apart, and you're telling him, about how to, treat his wife, and, pure, just the craziness, And then, we moved to California, and, I moved away from my whole social circle. I moved away from everybody. I moved away from my family. We moved up where some of his family lived. And I've got this beautiful little boy. And he's working and partying. And I'm staying at home. And I'm getting more and more depressed. But I have this beautiful boy I love. And I'm getting more and more depressed. And then I get pregnant again. And this time not on purpose. That was the hardest thing. I could barely hold on to my life at that point. And so we decided to move back to Arizona because our lives are imploding and I'm pregnant, and it's just not going well. And so with that, I didn't want this baby, right? I just couldn't do any more than I was doing. And, wished that I would miscarriage, and, and we moved back home, and we're doing natural childbirth, and, they didn't do ultrasounds back then, and I just felt like something was wrong, and no one would listen to me. And I would go to the natural childbirth place, and I'd say, something's not right. No one's listening to me. They're just like, oh, you're stressed. And so one day I didn't feel the baby move, and I told my husband, I said, we need to go, and because I think the baby's dead. And at this point, I'm 7.5 months pregnant, and feel like a hostage in my own world. And so we go, we find out the child, that I'd lost my son. And to stay with natural childbirthing, that I needed to carry that dead child until, until I gave birth, right? And so, about 2 weeks into it, I'm like, I looked at him one day and I said, you have 2 decisions today. One, we go to the hospital and I have the child, or 2, I'm going to kill myself. I didn't really care which decision we made at that point, And so we go in, we have this child, and 3 days later, I think it was maybe 2 days later, he doesn't come home. And I had felt before that he was having an affair, leading up to this, because Now remember, I felt like a hostage in my own life. And so I'm not happy. He's not happy. We have no coping skills. We have nobody around us to help us through this. We just have the madness in our house. And we have a little 3-year-old. And so he doesn't come home, and I find out that, he spent the night with this other woman. And so I go on this rampage and tear up all kinds of shit in the house and throw him out. And then I start working, and I'm of course, so I go to work in a bar because I need that attention that I get, from working in a bar, and that's, I need all of that. And so I'm drinking every night, driving home, and picking up my son, and every night I have this thought, I would have to drive under this underpass, and I think, if I hit the middle of that, I'm not going to take anybody else out with me, but I'll die. So every time I would come home, I would plan my own suicide. And, so this disease, I want you to know, is deadly for the other side. People don't think about what it does to the family members. And it does take us sometimes to that brink of just not wanting to live anymore. But in the back of my mind, I had this little 3-year-old, and I knew he was totally incapable of taking care of this beautiful child. And so I thought, that isn't an option for me. And so I got counseling. No one ever mentioned Al-Anon or any form of recovery, but I did go to, I got myself into therapy, and I found myself again, right? So we split up. He's off doing his deal, and found who I was again. I found that spark. I found that laughter. I found that happiness. And I remember in therapy, she goes, when was the last time you laughed? I mean, truly, truly laughed. And, growing up, remember, I always want fun, right? So I laughed all the time, and that laughter was gone in my household, and I didn't remember what it felt like to laugh anymore. I didn't know what that feeling was. And so I worked really hard, and I got that back. Now here's this guy over here, that I have a child with, so I still have to interact with him, and he's still cute, and he's still kind of fun. So when he would pay me periodically, we'd end up going out, and eventually we got back together after almost 2 years, and he still wasn't clean and sober, but I found myself again. I had lost myself so much in his disease, and so again I get pregnant, not meaning to, and it was the most stressful time because I was high-risk pregnancy again. And we have this amazing little boy again, another one. And I swore to myself, I'm not going down that rabbit hole one more time. I'm not going to lose myself. I'm not going to end up not wanting to live again. And I don't want to drag my kids through it. And, with the disease of addiction, with his, things would get good, and then they'd get bad, and then they'd get good, and then they'd get bad. And, they were good for a while. And then, his disease started taking off again, and I thought, I can't stay for this. I'm not going to drag my kids through this. And so I made my exit strategy, and I knew if I moved out and moved into someplace local, and he was in pretty bad shape. He had lost a lot of weight. He was gray in pallor and just not doing well. And I just had this vision that he's just going to sit on my front porch and die. And I thought, well, I can't do that. So I had made plans to go up to my mom and dad's, and they lived in Prescott. And so I was just going to wait till school's out, and I'm going to go live up there because I knew he wouldn't come up there. He had too much respect for my mom and dad, and my dad would probably kill him. And so my dad was a big guy and he meant business. But I never told my parents anything that was happening. They just knew I was unhappy. And so I'm getting ready and I'm waiting for school to get out, and then I get this phone call in the middle of the night, and she's like, I checked myself into a treatment center. And all I could say was, thank God, and I hung up. And, he ruined all my plans. I had the perfect exit strategy. I had an insurance check coming in from the business that we lost. I had all these things. I was going to go up to Prescott. I was going to have a nice life without him. And because there was no love left, I just didn't want him to die. I didn't really care what happened. I just didn't want him to die. And so Prescott sounded like a lot of fun. And now I can't leave him. He's in treatment, and that looks really bad when you leave them when they're in treatment, right? And so, so I decided to stay, and at least for a while. And so he ends up he was in a county detox and then a hospital and then a regular treatment center. And they had family week there, and I went to that. And so I got to tell you, my journey through Al-Anon is kind of like this. It's not a straight line for me. And so we were talking about it earlier. This treatment center, back then, no internet, no one had phones and all that stuff. And so they said, well, during family week, they said, you'd probably benefit from going to, a program for you. And I'm thinking, well, I'll do anything, but I don't see how this is going to help, but I'll do anything. And so it's so important to keep our meetings safe and to hear the message in our meetings. Unfortunately, that's not what I walked into. I walked into a meeting of 5 divorced women who were angry and had no hope. And they wanted to step on my hope. And so, I'm like, things are good. He's in treatment. We're working things out. Oh, honey, he'll get off your pink cloud soon. Are you checking his pockets? How do you know he's at where he's at? So they told me to go to 3 meetings. I made it to 2, and I thought, I'm going to be sicker if I stay here. And I didn't go back. But what I did do was I went to open meetings, and I heard the laughter, and I heard the hope, and I heard it could get better. And that's where I stayed, because that was where I heard the message. And then in through the side door come, some women that were in Al-Anon before it was Al-Anon. They were AAA. Betty Patterson, Elsie Gary, and they started talking to me about how gentle and how kind the program is, and how the program's not about him, and it's about healing here. And I started hearing the message. Still wasn't ready to go back, but at least it softened my heart. And then, fast forward a few years, and our oldest son started having his own little experience with substances, and he ends up in a treatment program. And then I really started finding out what family recovery was about. And, how I'm enabling. Just being a mom. I'm just a mom. I just want to help him. And, they started talking about loving him to death. And, and that's when I started hearing a little bit more of the message. And, after he graduated that program in a couple years, after a couple years, I would pop in and out of meetings. My husband would come home. He's like, oh, this guy's wife is struggling and, wants you to take her to an Al-Anon meeting. And so I would, dutifully take her to an Al-Anon meeting, sit with her for the hour and say, where it is now. Here it is. And not go back. I don't know whether they ever went back, but, I'd be like, not quite ready yet. And, because life had gotten better. The craziness had stopped. And so, but what I didn't realize was there was still that anger and resentment in me, and still always kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. I remember early in recovery, he would come home, and he'd walk in the door after working long hours, and I'd be like, we need to talk. We got stuff we have to handle. We've got financial issues we got to take care of. The kids are crazy. We need to talk. And he'd go, I hear you. I have to go to a meeting. And he would turn around and he'd walk out of the door. What the hell? How can he do that? I'm stuck at home with these kids, and I have very little money I'm still we were 3 months behind on the house payment. We were hiding our car, and there was a lot of financial ruin at that time. And I felt like I had all of the weight on my shoulders. And his solution is going to a damn meeting. His solution is hanging out with the guys he went through treatment center with. His solution was his solution, right? Because I'm so crazy, but he's working on the solution. I'm working on the crazy over here. He's working on the solution. And so one day I'm driving, and clear as day, I hear, would you want to come home to you? And my next response was, oh, hell no. I would not want to come home to me. I was not nice. I was like that little barky chihuahua. He'd walk in the front door, and I'm nipping at his heels. And he would just say, I got to go to a meeting. And, it was just, I didn't get it, right? But then we'd go to open meetings. And then on the other side, I would hear to get better. And so I started just, I calmed down a lot. Money started coming in. Things started getting a little bit better. And then, then our son decided what he was going to do. And, I talk about it, and, it's kind of like a cupcake, right? So he gets sober, and we had a shit sandwich over here before. Now we've got a cupcake. No frosting, but it's still good, right? It's still good. So then I get into recovery, and I start working the steps, and I start letting go of that anger, fear, resentment, and I start looking at my behaviors in all of this. And, it's not, I wouldn't do this if you hadn't done that. Justifying my behaviors by his actions, that was how I always justified, all the things that I did, it's because of him. Well, he got sober. I'm still mad. I'm still angry. I'm still resentful. I'm still fearful. And so I started letting go of all that, and I started, working on myself. And I'm starting to get some nice frosting on that cupcake, and it's getting better and better. And, then I start sponsoring women. Oh, man. Then I get to see other people's lives change. And all I have to do is share my story and listen to theirs and show them through the book. And I get to see lives change. Where else do you get that, right? And so when he got sober, we used to be the party house. Everybody came to our house. We always had all the food, all the booze, everybody was there. When he went into treatment, only one person called to see how I was. Only one person out of all of these so-called friends of ours. Today, I know if something were to happen to him, I'd have to beat him off the door. I've got this circle of people who truly, genuinely care. And it's not about what I can provide. It's not about any of that. It's about just really, really caring about us as people. This fellowship just surrounds you no matter what happens. And I am so grateful for that. So grateful for that. And now I've got this cupcake that's just overflowing with goodness. I was at a wedding, somebody in recovery, I don't know, I'm going to say it was about 9 months ago or so. And I sat in this room, and I became just so overwhelmed with emotion because I knew almost everybody's story in that room. And I realized what a miracle all these people were. And I'm sitting in the middle of a miracle. And it's just everyday life for everybody else. But I get to see what's happening. And I get to acknowledge it. And those kids that I dragged through hell, I would, again, there's no internet, no phone, so I'd have to drag them, put them in the car, load them up, and try to find him. Never found him. And, I was talking earlier to somebody, and I remember leaving him, going and staying in a hotel, when we just had one boy then. And he didn't even know I left. I come back in the morning, and he was totally unaware. So that wasn't really effective. I only did that twice before I figured out that doesn't work. I'm a quick learner. And then I'm mad because I spent the money that we didn't have, on a hotel. But, man, some of the craziness that I did in all of this. I used to call the bank because, that was the only way you could find out how much money he's taking out. And I would call, and I swear this poor woman at Chase always answered the phone. I recognized her voice. She recognized mine. If I could ever find her, I'd make amends to her, because she would always go, "Oh, honey, he took out another 40. He took out another 80. And I don't know what difference it made. Money's gone. It's not like, but there was that part of me that just had to always had to know. And that craziness behind that, my behaviors became as insane as his, probably even more. All he wanted to do was, feed his disease. I wanted to kill him. So, through working the steps and through doing my inventories over the years, I become more and more aware of what needs to change next. And one time it came up that I wasn't the daughter that I felt I should have been to those amazing parents that I had. And I should do something about that. My mom, I felt like she was a pain in the ass. She would call, and then she'd, complain, and I didn't want to hear her complaints. And then I realized that, she was just trying to talk to me, And so I started calling her, and I started talking about things that I knew she was interested in. And so we changed that line of communication between the two of us. And I would switch it to where it was something happier. And I remember once she caught me because she was complaining about something, and then she goes, "Oh yeah, that's right. I'm not supposed to complain. Let's go to the happy place." I never told her that. She just figured it out. She was a smart woman. But I started going up to my mom and dad's house, and I would take that 2-hour drive every 2 weeks. And I started talking to them about their life and what it was like growing up. My mom, both of her parents died of alcoholism. And, I wanted to know what that was like. And I wanted to know what it was like growing up and how hard that was for her being the oldest of 3 kids and having to care for them. And I wanted to know what their dating life was like. Through this program, I got to meet my parents. I got to understand who they were and what made them. They were incredible people. They were the 2 least judgmental people I've ever met in my life, even though they didn't have easy lives. They just didn't judge anybody. And so I wanted more and more of that. And then, my mom was just there. Still didn't have much of a relationship with her, a little bit better. My dad was my hero. He was just bigger than life, just an amazing, kind, gentle man. And so in my brain, this is what it's going to look like. Mom's going to die. She has all these health issues. She's going to die. I get to have Dad, move him in, and I get to hang out with my best buddy, right? Well, he unexpectedly died. That sucks. I'm sitting there going, oh God, I'm pissed at God now, because my plans were not happening. And so I sat there, and sitting there thinking, what am I going to do with my mom? And the answer came, you're just going to love her. So then I started driving up every week, and I started taking her to every one of her doctor's appointments. And then she decided to go off pain medication. They were just drugging the crap out of her. She was on so much pain medication, she could not touch her feelings. And so she asked me, she said, I really want to go off pain meds. And I said, okay, I'll help you with that. And we found a doctor who had worked in a treatment center before. And, and I knew enough about substances, and we worked together. We backed her all the way off pain meds. And one day she looked at me and she goes, I'm happy. I'm happier. And she goes, I didn't realize how much that was blocking me of just feeling my emotions. And then I started really getting to know my mom. Who knew she had a sense of humor? She had a wicked sense of humor that I didn't know until she was, in her 80s. I didn't know she had a sense of humor. I just thought she was, mom, And, she used to always tell me, I want to die in my sleep, in my own house, in my bed. I said, okay, Mom, you and God talk about that, you work it out. I said, but I have a pillow. And if you want, and every once in a while she'd be complaining about something, I'd pick up a pillow and I'd look at her and I'd just kind of take the pillow and she goes, no, not today, not today. And so, one Thanksgiving, the day after my brother called me, because he had gone up to spend Thanksgiving with her, he goes, Mom died. What? We had just been to the heart doctor and he was getting ready to do a heart therapy on her. She had a valve replacement. Like, what the hell? She was fine. And he goes, she had Thanksgiving dinner. She smiled and said goodnight. Died in her sleep. Like, that's pretty powerful. Be careful what you tell her. Because, she got every wish she had. She had a great family, great dinner with her oldest son, and went to bed. And was so peaceful. But with that, this program helped me to be the daughter that I never knew I wanted to be. There was nothing left unsaid. There was no apology. There was no regret. Everything that I ever wanted came to pass. And so what happens is life happens. And I get to choose how I want to interact with that life. And man, I am so grateful that I choose to be happy. And life still happens, I was sitting there during COVID, and our youngest son really struggled with a lot of fears around COVID. And I realized that, I have a program that helps me work through those fears. Whatever the fear is, I have a program that helps me work through that fear, because life's still going to happen. And I get to choose today how I want to respond and how I want to show up to that life. And I'm still one of those people that just want to be happy all the time. And it's not always a zippity-doo all day. It's not like life is just, wah, on every given day. But most days it is. Most days are pretty damn good. Our son lives across the street with his wife and his 2 kids. I get to run across the street no matter how busy I am. If one of those girls come out and they say something, I will stop and go across the street and hug them, no matter how far behind I'm running. And I get to choose that today. Now the old me, I got this and this and this and this to do. I've got a time schedule I have to keep. Love you. And that would be it. Today I get to go and embrace them. Because I have choices. I never knew I had choices before. I was a victim of my life. And today I get to choose, where I want to be, what I want to do. And check where I am time-wise. Oh, you guys get more fun. And what a blessing. You know, I get to sponsor people. I get to be there for people. You know, and the one thing I've got to say is make your meetings safe. Make people feel welcome. Allow them to hear the message of hope. Because, you know, that almost killed me. The fact that I ever made it back to a meeting after that, you know, so many people walk away from meetings on either side. And if they don't hear hope and they don't hear a message, they're going to leave and not know that there's this beautiful program that they don't see because no one's carrying the message. So it's important. You know, my husband's got 34 years of sobriety, and someone asked me one day, why do you still go to meetings? And I'm like, if I don't go to meetings, there's no one to open the door. There's no one to reach their hand out. And then all they have is the madness. And I remember those 5 angry women. And, you know, I don't want that to be the message that people hear. You know, I want them to hear that, sometimes things are hard. You know, sometimes they're hard, but I've got a solution. And I'm going to make it through the hard time. And I've got so many amazing people around me that when I'm struggling, they pick me up and they help me through it. You know, I've had a lot of loss the last couple of years. And, you know, people just surround me. And they ask me how I'm doing. And they care. They listen instead of, oh, how you doing? And, you know, that's what this fellowship brings to me. And, you know, it's through the steps, I always learn what's the next right thing that I need to change. And that I hope to always be teachable. You know, that's the one thing that I really, really strive for, is to always be teachable and to always be able to look at myself and see what God wants to change in me next. Because I'm not doing anything. God's got this. If it were me, man, I'd probably be out in the middle of nowhere not talking to a single human being. Because that's my happy place. Just being away from everybody and not having to do all of this other stuff. But it's not really my happy place. It's where my head tells me my happy place is. It's where my head tells me I need to go so I don't have to figure things out. And, I'm just so grateful. It has changed how my relationship with my parents. It certainly changed my relationship with my husband. I don't think we'd still be married. I sincerely doubt that we'd still be here. And, but I'm a really good mom today. I don't torture my children anymore. I remember when, right after he got sober, our youngest son he was eating in the living room and he dropped his food on the floor and he's like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, you don't have to be sorry. It's okay. I said, did you do it on purpose? And he said, no. And I said, then there's accidents you don't have to be sorry for. But I realized what in me had created that behavior in him, that response in him, because I was always bitching, always, why can't you, slow down enough that you don't drop your food on the floor? Why can't you just? And, it really was an eye-opener for me. And today I'm a really good mom. I mean, the amends I made with my children, those were amazing. They were just so wonderful. And I'm a good sister today. I'm a great grandma. I love being a grandma. That's my favorite thing. And, before, I'm so busy. My head's so busy. I need to figure all this out. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I don't have enough time to be patient and present and be there because my brain's going like this all the time. And so, the program helps me breathe. Meditation helps me stop. And I've learned that I don't have to solve anything. God's got it. I'm just here to be the messenger of whatever his story is, how he wants to guide me. And with that, I don't have to figure things out. I just have to keep my feet going in the right direction. And sometimes my will sneaks in there and it doesn't feel comfortable very long, and I go, I'm going to go the other direction. And God just smiles. Because my God has a really funny sense of humor. And I think sometimes he just likes to watch me spin in the corner, and then he goes, are you done yet? And then when I stop, he kind of smiles, and then it gets better. Because I still spin. I'm human, and I'm big human, I live life to the absolute fullest. There's not a wasted breath in me. And, especially the older I get, I realize how few breaths I have left. And so I want to grab everything I can, and just live and love to the absolute maximum I can. And today I can do it without harming people. And that's the good thing. Because you never knew if you were going to piss me off or not. And, because there's still that bratty little sister in me that wants what I want when I want it. And if I don't get it, you're going to know. And today I don't have to live that way. And my brothers are really thankful for that, by the way. They still, well, I've got one that won't talk to me, but that's a whole other story. I talk to him. I keep my side of the street clean. I call every 2 months, leave a message, tell him I love him, tell him I hope he's well. And I do the right thing. What he does is his choice. But I don't want to live with regrets. I don't want to ever say I should have called. I should have done this. I want to make sure I do them. And that I keep my side clean. And I love him, He's just a broken human being. And, so my other 2 brothers just think I'm funny. They just kind of look at me and go, I don't ever tell them what I'm doing because they just kind of don't get it. But with that, keep, if you haven't worked the steps, work the steps. Get a sponsee. Watch the world change around you. And that's just like the magic of this whole thing, is if I just keep doing what I'm doing, the world just keeps getting brighter and better. And it just, magic. Just pure magic. And with that, that's all I've got.